It's very rare that I consider an episode of a show perfect. I mean, there are plenty of great episodes, but very rarely are there any perfect episodes. To make a perfect episode, there are several things that the show has to do in that episode. There has to be something that hooks us to the events of the current episode. There has to be something that gives us hope for the future of the series and its characters, and it has to conclude in a way that gives us some closure for the characters or the arc as a whole. This is really hard for most shows to do, especially shows that rely on long-running story points and generally just long stories and arcs in general. However, once in a while, the stars do align and we get a perfect episode. But imagine my surprise when that episode came from a long-running shonen series, and the episode it came from was the third to last episode, and the episode that involved zero combat whatsoever. So this is why, in my opinion, the My Hero Academia episode Let It Flow School Festival is a perfect episode. Let's begin. The fourth season of My Hero Academia was already a really great season. We had incredible villains from start to finish in both arcs. We had really great action, great and very interesting character introductions, and touching moments that, in all honesty, kind of made me cry. But there were not really any episodes that fit the criteria to make a perfect episode. Enter episode 23. So just for a little context, we are already well past Overhaul's arc, and we see more of Eri now as her own character instead of seeing her as a person needing rescue from Overhaul. And in the very last episode, we had just wrapped up the big Deku versus Gentle Criminal fight, and the whole building plot point of Gentle Criminal and La Brava going to attack UA. So at this point, there was no more need for any combat. We were just getting the conclusion to that arc. Now, the fight concluded in the last episode, but the entire time that last episode was going on, we had the ticking clock of Deku trying to get back to UA to be part of the concert that the class was putting on, and this was very important because we knew that Eri really wanted to see Deku performing and just wanted to see the entire event as a whole. And when this episode picks up, the clock is still ticking. So right there is our first hook to the episode. We already have the running time of Deku needing to get back to Class 1A for the performance. The other hook that we have doesn't really happen until the end of the episode, which is the conclusion to the story arc that we have with Gentle. Now, it's sort of a conclusion and a hook because we kind of want to see what happens to Gentle after he's arrested early on in the episode, so we stick through that. We get the conclusion to his character arc in a way, but we also have a lot of hope for the future because we don't know what's going to happen with his character. And in all honesty, he was one of the most interesting characters of the past few seasons, especially as a villain. So generally, we tended to want to invest more time in him as a character to see what he's going to do next, because we can kind of see from his perspective while also still understanding that what he's doing is wrong. So I think that was a really good way of investing us in his character. And like I said, they gave us a conclusion to his character arc that was really good. They nailed it. And again, they tied it up in this nice little bow of hope for the future of this character. So this is already putting this episode on a great track to being a, great episode. Not quite perfect yet, but great. Getting back to the first hook though, Deku makes it back to UA just in time. And this gives us a conclusion to another long-running story point that we've been invested in for this entire arc, which is the concert. We've been watching Class 1A preparing for this concert since the start of the second half of this season, and seeing all of that planning come to fruition feels like a conclusion in and of itself, and they nailed it. The music perfectly summarizes all of the emotion that we've seen through this entire season, and the highlight of this performance is Eri, the girl who has been through so much that she has a permanent shadow over her. The girl who our heroes have sacrificed so much for just to rescue. This girl who, just a few episodes before, didn't even know how to smile, finally smiles. And it gives us this feeling of just such happiness. It'll warm the heart of even the most callous person. And this gives both Deku and especially Mirio justification for the sacrifices that they've made through this entire series. And it gives us as the viewer hope for the future of Eri's character because we want to see more of her and we want to see her grow alongside the rest of the characters. And it's great because we can see that the weight of these shackles she's had since the start of her story arc are gone. And hopefully that means that her character development is going to be even better and presumably faster, potentially on pace with some of the other characters. So again, there's our hope for the future of the series. So that moment, the entire concert portion on its own would be enough for me to consider this episode perfect, not even counting the bit of story we get to see about Jiro's conflict of becoming a hero instead of a musician, which in and of its own way is a great piece of character development. All of this would be enough for me to consider this a perfect episode. But no, they just keep piling it on with things like Nejire winning the beauty pageant in her final year, her last opportunity to win it, and the other classes putting on all the events that they had been planning. All of these things were perfect, and on top of all of that, they conclude the episode with Deku giving Eri a candied apple, a little detail that had been brought up when they were first making plans to bring her to the sports festival is being paid off in this final moment of this episode. And getting to see the smile of this child who, for the first time since the start of this season when we were introduced to her, is actually getting to be a child, solidified this episode as a perfect episode in my opinion. It hooked us to the story by playing to our emotions and our investment in the characters perfectly. It concluded story points that have been going from the middle point, or in some cases like Eri, the beginning of this season, and it gave us hope for the future of this series, not only in potential story points, but also in character development. And all of those things combined, while still giving us another 2 episodes to conclude the series and build on what might happen next, is why, in my opinion, this is a perfect episode. That's been it, guys. I put a lot of time into trying to think of why I was so hooked to this episode and what, in my opinion, made it perfect. Hopefully you guys agree. If you don't, please let me know in the comments. I'd like to hear your thoughts. And apart from that, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And otherwise, I'll see you all in the next episode of whatever I decide to record, honestly. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Make sure to be there and have a good one.